arrives momentarily. Okay. Any luck? We are live.
Okay.
All right. Well, I can, would you like me to screen share the announcements, Blair? Would that be helpful?
Yes, please. That would be very helpful.
And I will post links in the chat as well. All right, just give me a moment to get all I've only got one monitor here at home. One screen makes it a little more difficult to share, but I will have it up in just a moment.
2 shakes of a lamb's tail.
Something like that. Let's see. Let's try.
Welcome, Tim.
Hello, everyone. Hello, hello.
Okay, that seems decent. Can you guys see this?
Yes.
Okay, great. All right, everybody. So a few announcements for us. As you can see, there's Mind Model Method Coach Training in Arizona that is happening in January 5th through the 8th and 13th through 16th of 2026, not 2025. If you go in 2025, then you have found a time machine, and please share that information with the rest of us in 2026. There's also the podcast, Mind Model Mastery Secrets, on Monday and Thursdays. You can find that on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple at the link provided. That's youtube.com/at Mind Model Mastery Secrets. The Mind Model Minutes podcast is on YouTube at youtube.com/at Mind Model Minutes. And if you'd like, you can take advantage of a free profiling session with Blair. If you go to Blair's LinkedIn, it's at linkedin.com/in/Blair Dunkley 1. Send him a message that says profile to take advantage of that. And the rest of our announcements, I believe, are posted in the chat. You should be able to see them there in Zoom. I can read them off. That's the link to that Mind Model Mastery Secrets podcast link to Mind Model Minutes, and also Blair's books, Ultimate Mind Hacking on Amazon and Phobia Freedom Formula. I believe that is all the announcements. Blair, correct me if I'm wrong.
I believe so. Yes.
Excellent. With that, I will hand it over to you, Patty.
Okay, thank you. Welcome to the 368th episode of the Blair Dunkley Experience, where we discuss mind models. Mind models are a collection of extensively tested thought frameworks, skills, and behaviors that enable people to transform their lives intentionally. Your host for this evening is Blair Dunkley, the creator of Mind Models. My name is Patty. I'm a certified Mind Model Method coach and your co-host tonight, along with certified Mind Model Method coaches Colin Jewett, Tim and Becky Graff. The Blair Dunkley Experience is Blair's free gift to you, and it is an opportunity to learn, experience, and practice mind models in a safe, real-world environment. Personally, mind models helped me overcome more than a decade of depression. They have positively impacted my life in every area, including my relationship with myself. We look forward to learning with you tonight and welcome you to the BDE. With that, Blair, would you like to show the review video that you had come up with?
Yes.
Kind of give people a basis for what's coming.
Yes, it's not exactly a review, but it is a overall teaser video, I guess. So anyway, I'm going to share my screen and go here, and hopefully everybody can see this. And there we go.
We're going to talk about a simple little question that holds a shocking amount of power over our mood and our motivation. I mean, you know that feeling, right? Something goes wrong and your brain just gets stuck on repeat. Why did this happen to me? Why do I feel like this? Why can't I just get going? It feels like you're digging for some crucial answer, but really all you're finding is a deeper and deeper hole. Well, this trap actually has a name. It's called the why hole. And just like the sirens in the old myths, its call is, it's really tempting. It promises you'll find some big understanding, but in reality, it usually leads straight to being completely paralyzed. So what exactly is this why hole? Think of it as a linguistic trap. It's what happens when you get caught asking why over and over again about the past. You're hunting for reasons, for justifications. And here's the really sneaky part. It feels productive. It feels like you're doing some important detective work on your own life. But what's really happening is you're just anchoring yourself to the very problem you're trying to get away from. Now, what's so fascinating, and honestly so critical to get, is the direct line between this pattern and depressive states. This isn't just some quirky mental habit. It's a language loop that can actively and powerfully fuel feelings of depression. This reframe from mind model creator Blair Dunkley it gets right to the heart of it. What he's suggesting is that depression isn't just something that happens to you. It can be a pattern that you actively run, a pattern of behavior, and more importantly, a pattern of language. And if it's a pattern, well, that means it can be interrupted. And here's the core of that pattern. Instead of focusing on creating actual results out in the real world, all your focus just collapses inward. You get completely trapped trying to find justifications inside your own head, basically just spinning your wheels and getting absolutely nowhere. Just look at this contrast here. It's night and day. On one side, you've got the why-hole language. It is 100% stuck in the past, always looking for excuses that let you stay put. But on the other side, you've got action language. That's all about the present and the future. It's seeking solutions that actually demand you get up and move. It's like you're running two totally different operating systems in your mind. And the emotional price tag for living in that why hole it's incredibly high. This way of talking to yourself, always focused on the past and looking for justifications, is a direct pipeline to feeling angry, sad, guilty. It's what creates that heavy, crushing sense of hopelessness, where it feels like you have absolutely no choices left. The metaphor for this is just perfect. It's a black hole. The more you ask why, the stronger its gravitational pull gets. It just pulls you further and further inward, disconnects you from taking any action, and cements this false belief that your situation can't and won't ever change. But, and this is the most important part, you are not powerless here. The entire escape plan, the way you get out of that black hole, it all hinges on changing just one tiny, simple thing. So what's the escape hatch? Well, it's all about making a simple but really powerful pivot. It's about shifting your focus from the past to the future, from reasons to results. Okay, this right here is the absolute key to the whole thing. Asking why is asking for a cause that's already happened. It forces you to relive the pain, and it keeps you stuck. But if you switch that to what can I do now, or how can I move forward, well, now you're asking for a future action. That simple little switch turns a miserable loop into a launch pad. So the big question is, how do you actually do this? How do you make this shift in the moment when that pull of the why hole feels so strong? Let's break down the practical tools you can use right now. Here is a super simple 4-step move. First, just notice. Become aware that you're asking why again. That's it. Step 2, choose. Make a conscious decision right then and there to pivot away from that question. Third, replace it. Swap why with what's one thing I can do, or how can I make this just 1% better? And finally, the most important step, act. Take one tiny, simple action. It doesn't have to be big. Even the smallest movement breaks the paralysis. Now look, this isn't about pretending the past didn't happen. Not at all. It's about fundamentally changing your relationship to the past. The goal is to stop reliving all that emotional pain and start remembering it as useful data, information that you can now use to build a different, better future. And this all brings us to the most empowering part of this whole idea, the realization that you get to choose. You get to choose the questions that guide your focus and ultimately shape your life. At the end of the day, this is what it's all about. The language you use isn't passive, it's creative. The questions you ask yourself literally shape your reality. By consciously choosing to shift from why to what and how, you stop being a victim of your circumstances and you start being the architect of your own future. So let's make this real. Let's not let this just be an interesting idea. Let's apply it. Right now, ask yourself this. What is one how question that can move me forward today? That one question, that could be your first step out of the hole.
Thank you for the feedback there, Jackie. Next time, it won't be on a faster speed. It'll just be on 1x. Okay.
Well, Blair, would you like to lead us off? It was your definition in the video, with depression not being merely a chemical imbalance or emotional state. It's a behavioral linguistic pattern rooted in how individuals process meaning. Would you like to expand on that?
Yes, I actually would. I'd like to. Can I have a conversation with you, Patty?
Me? Okay.
Thank you. Is it okay if any of this is not something you're comfortable with, please feel free just to say no thanks.
Okay.
Okay, super. And I don't know when it's going to pop into a conversation either, to be honest with you. I just know that I've got this idea in my head and I'm going to try and run with it a little bit. It's very impromptu. So, what is depression? In your introduction, you shared your background piece
Hmm.
of your depression.
Yes.
Okay. And I worked with you for 12 sessions over
Yes.
4 months.
Hmm.
And what occurred from your perspective?
That process took me from a stuck place where everything felt very dark and hopeless, a place that I had accepted was a place I just had to live in. That was just going to be the color of my life from that point forward.
Okay,
And I just needed to adjust and accept.
great. Now, how did you state that you went in for, or inferred that you went in for collective, whatever. Did you go in for, you went in for therapy, correct? And
I was on and off medications and in and out of counseling throughout that time.
wow, okay. And yet, for whatever reason, and you can fill in the reason if you feel that it's relevant, but for whatever reason, that didn't work.
No, it didn't work. A lot of the counseling was looking primarily at the past and looking for reasons that I was experiencing this. And there was a certain amount of judgment with some of this, like if I was just more grateful, if I was just more of something, I could kick myself out of this. It was almost like depression was assumed to in some way be
Conflicted. Just hit the switch.
that that depression was somehow an act of my will. And the ironic thing is that within the realm of language, it is an act of my will. It's my will to choose how I speak to myself and how I look at the world. But I didn't have those skills at the time. And so I felt blamed for my depression. I felt guilty for my depression. I wasn't deep in depression the whole time. I could lighten up from mild to moderate, you know, um, but I couldn't ever really shake it.
Right. Okay, so yet they had, you had months, if not years collectively, of counseling, therapy, and medication. Um,
Years of medication, counseling, I would give it a try for a few months and let it go because it just wasn't effective. It
okay,
wasn't getting me anyplace. So I wasn't years of therapy, but I was years of medication.
interesting. Okay, one of the things that I wanted to point out, these are what you're showing that was fairly common for me when I was at life skills colleges. And 80% of our student population, which was around 800 students a year, we had 1,000 students roughly at our peak in all of our campuses, and 80% were potentially suicidal. One of the things that we found, or I found, well, we can't take full credit. We had lots of coaches working, and we'd have group conversations about this. And when I was doing my research for mind models, I realized that the thing that was holding people stuck was how they were thinking.
Mhm.
And it's always about how we're thinking. Now, one of the things that neuroscience has shown is that how we think actually can impact our brain, literally physiologically. We have
Yes.
an area in our brain that is an area in the close to the amygdala, but not, well, butting up against the amygdala, which is around the area that is known to have people. The size of this area grows the more depressed you are.
Mm.
So the more practiced you get at it, the larger this area gets. And I wish I remembered the name right now. I'm sorry I didn't. Um, Now, one of the things that we have around that is the whole construct of figuring out um, how we cope with life. And one of the assumptions, well, one of the studies we ran at the college was a psychological test that the authors of claimed that we got um, this snapshot of how a person's personality profile is, and it's fixed after the age of 25. Well, now we know that that's no longer true, but back then it was absolutely true and or held as the truth. But we did the study and we did it pre and post application. Like before, when the students started life skills, they took the test. When they were exiting and graduating, they took the test again. And we frequently saw radical shifts, and we informed the people that had that had the study and said, this is what we're finding. They just poo-pooed us left, right, and center and said, this can't possibly be. You mis administered the test. It wasn't correct, yada, yada, yada. And they just, you know, shoved it off. What is MPPI?
He's wondering if the test that you administered was the MMPI.
No, I don't believe it was. Sorry.
Okay, just curious.
Yeah, that's okay.
Mhm.
Um, that one doesn't ring a bell. Um, anyway, bottom line here is about a year or so later, we resubmitted um, and had third parties come in and administer the tests pre and post. But we had two different groups or two different individuals actually administer the test, one pre and one post. Both fully qualified in that test and administering it. And we got the same results that some of our students, not all of them, but some of them actually fairly high, like 45% of our students had radical changes in their um, stuff, in their personality index. And that was significant because we collectively shared that back to the people that proposed the test or that created the test to show them what was going on, just to say, we're not amateurs, we are professionals, but we hired other professionals to administer the stuff. So it's not us, it's their stuff. They were trained by you to correctly administer it. And we used different parties and we did test the same people twice. They did not like the fact that we tested the same people twice because you're not supposed to, because it's not supposed to be meaningful. But it was meaningful because we got a fully acknowledged 45% difference. And I might be wrong. I might actually be low on that number. It might have been closer to 55 and 45 didn't change and 55 did. Anyway, it was a long time ago, 30 plus years ago. But that was the motivation that I had to dive deeper into the fact that we are not locked in just because our brain physiologically has changed because we're in a depressed state doesn't mean that we can't also physiologically change our brain when we get out of a depressed state. And that's additional research that has also been done where people have had MRIs done of their brain, measured them in depressed state, measured them through talk therapy was one of the areas, effective talk therapy, effective medication, and doing nothing. Like those were the three things. So a control group of we didn't do anything, one that took medication. By the way, the group that did medication, their area of their brain did shrink as well, that showed depression. Talk therapy shrunk slightly more on average than the people who did the medication. But when they retested 3 months later, the people who did the talk therapy, effective talk therapy, their size stayed or reduced, whereas the medicated side sprung back, like regrew, which told me the only thing that's different here is people in talk therapy learned something about how to talk about either their feelings, emotions, or something about this that causes things to shift. And obviously, the ones that did nothing, nothing changed. So at the end of the day, we need to look at how we think, because how we think will physiologically create a different brain and a different way of thinking. Okay, think about that. That's pretty profound when you think about it. It literally changes how you think, how you are, changes your physiologically the structure of your brain. And that's huge. So if you give people language-based rules, by the way, your language is largely, not exclusively, but largely formulated in the temporal lobes in your brain. But the temporal area of your brain, which is right around, that's the reason that I'm touching my head here and here. It's in the temporal lobes, which are located here. But the temporal lobe, where language is predominantly formulated and utilized and processed, is the only area of your brain that touches all the other areas of your brain. And that's very significant. So that is huge when you think about if you use talk therapy or express things verbally, or don't express things verbally but have internal dialogue with yourself, you are actually reinforcing or changing the wiring in your brain. And that is a significant piece of information. So what happens? Well, lots of things happen. Chemical imbalances, emotional states aren't necessarily root cause. It is habit patterns that you adopt, you use, and you go on with. And you cannot change habit patterns if you don't have replacement behaviors. And that's what mind models are all about. Mind models, what they are, what they were all generated as and created for, was to give somebody a way of replacing their stuck state with a proactive state, with a different state of being, so that they can literally start choosing a different way of being. One of the key areas here is in your story, Patty, you were inferring that people weren't helping you become victimless. They were actually inferring that you were self-imposing a victim state. Because, yeah.
Yes, I didn't think of it that way at the time. But it was that somehow I was responsible for being in a depression, and that if I made somehow some kind of change, that the depression would miraculously go away. And, yeah, Shannon said, feeding me their story. They did have a story. They had a story for my life. One of the things that Tim put in the chat, internal versus external, there's a lot of internal self-talk that goes on when a person is depressed.
Yes.
And when you don't externalize it in some way, which is probably one of the reasons that talk therapy helped those people that you were talking about in the study, is that externalizing it allows you to look at it and say, is this accurate or is this not accurate? Is this me? Is this not me? And when it's all internal, it's all me. And Shannon put in the chat, my models give you the tools to take your personal power back for your own story. So that's basically what happened to me. Was once I was able to get out of my story and get back to the present and out of the past and look at what was true now and update to that, update to who I was at that point. That was like 7, almost 8 years ago. And I can say that I have had feelings of depression, but I have never been stuck in depression. I have never been what I would call depressed since then.
Exactly. And feelings, by the way, feelings of depression are normal for everybody.
Absolutely.
Okay.
But they're not an identity. They don't have to become an identity.
Absolutely true.
They don't have to become a state of being.
Don't have to become a label.
Pardon me,
Yes.
what is that, Jacqueline?
Yeah, I just said they don't have to become a label.
Right. They don't have to become a label. And I'd restate that slightly and say they don't have to become your label.
Yes, we're talking about labels. Do you guys want an update of this shyness versus how was it? Social anxiety?
Anxiety. Yes.
It's not fucking happening anymore. I'm dead serious. I don't know what. I mean, I went away to visit my friend, and I was going to go for 4 days and ended up staying 10, which is all right. That's all right. She lives in Seychelles, or Gibson's, where, the Beachcombers was filmed.
Yep.
Many moons ago. Anyway, it's beautiful up there. And I never want, because I totally dropped the word shy and replaced it for social anxiety. I don't feel shy anymore. But I'm also not identifying the social anxiousness as much.
Interesting.
Well, let's see how it all unfolds. But so now now that I'm kind of back at my place and kind of figuring out it's wintertime again. Anyway, figuring out what to do. And also, I'm going to do some testing. Like I'm going to go and attend a social event, and not yet, even if I have to go on my own.
Well, we'd love to see how it goes for you.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Anyways, completely change the subject, but I just was talking, about this label of yourself. And it's quite interesting because I was just sitting here thinking about all of the things that I'm not doing because I do not have that label.
Mm-hmm.
I've never once said since we were here last, I feel shy or I'm shy. People just don't get that I'm shy, like trying to talk to a friend and say, oh, well, I'm actually really shy. And they're like, oh, no, you're not. That doesn't even come up anymore because I don't feel it. I don't feel shy anymore.
Exactly. Which is not an uncommon thing when people consciously choose to examine and test their name and labeling. One of the things that I did with Patty is Patty would bring up things that I'd be asking her. So what did you do effective today? What was one thing that you did effective? And she would start off with absolutely nothing. And I go, well, that can't possibly be true.
breathing.
Well, exactly. Breathing is one thing, but another thing is you got on the call. Is that effective? Yes, but we'll see, but yes, but we'll see. So there was hemming and hawing and stuff like that. But there's lots of other things. And that's how come doing the exercise, the three things that work, two things that don't work, and one thing that you might change becomes highly effective for battling depression. It also shifts people in terms of confidence versus self-confidence. So when you are in a depressed state, you don't have your sense of confidence that and even self-confidence that you once had. Because self-confidence is others identifying our self-confidence, or sorry, confidence is others identifying your successful use of skills, attitudes, and behaviors. And self-confidence is you self-identifying your own effective use of skills, attitudes, and behaviors. So these are all things that roll into how we view ourselves. And in that little explainer video, talked about real versus reality and how we're not dealing necessarily, we're holding things that are real that are actually our reality, is what it comes down to. It's not really real, it's our perception of what's real. And that's a big deal.
Blair,
So
I'd like to take a minute and address Zach's thing in the chat.
please go
He's
right ahead.
asking if there's a difference between taking back your power and being in the present, as opposed to before when people were saying the depression was my responsibility. I know there's obviously a distinct difference there. He's trying to work it out in his head. I guess the difference, personal power is an expression that my daughter uses. It's not one that, and she put that in the chat. It's not one I identify with. I'm still playing with it, trying to figure out what does personal power really mean or represent in my life. So that's something I'm still testing for myself. But being in the present and identifying for myself, who am I? I was telling Blair when we were preparing this, the breakthrough moment, and it came probably after maybe 6 or maybe 8 of the 12 sessions, where he asked me what words would I use to describe myself? And I was thrown as much for a loop with that as I was for what have I done effectively today, because I couldn't think of anything, literally nothing that I had done that was effective when he would ask me that. And then when he asked me to describe myself again, my mind went completely blank. And he let me sit in the silence with that for a little bit. And I came up with one word. I came up with the fact that I could identify as being capable. And that word capable turned my life around. I could see myself accurately as being capable. That one, I wanted to be capable. I could see there was external evidence in my life that I was a capable woman. I had accomplished things. I impacted the lives around me in positive ways. I was capable, and still am, by the way, a capable woman. And when I started to do that, that's where I felt a measure of power. I felt that the labels were mine. I owned them. I could update to that, as opposed to other people trying to tell me who I was. And that's where that's where I see the difference within in your question. That's the difference for me. I hope that helps you with a bit of clarity, Zach. So yeah, it's a very powerful label, being capable.
Right.
So when we begin to identify who we are, it's interesting exercise actually to make a list of the words you would use to identify yourself. Who are you right now in real time, as opposed to who are other people saying that you are? What words would you use to identify yourself? And the different qualities that make you who you are, that make you you. And they're externally verifiable, as opposed to sinking inside where nobody argues with your negative impression of yourself. Nobody argues for you in your internal self-talk when you're talking yourself down.
Yep. All of that is so true. So, one of the key elements here is that when you were talking there, Patty, you were looking for externally verifiable points of view, and capable was all about stuff that was, you couldn't refute it because you'd already learned the threes. So it was effective, but it was also externally verifiable.
Mm-hmm.
And it was something that you could prove just by observation that that was true for you.
Mm-hmm.
And nobody could really take that away because it is true for you.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one of the things that I found, is that if we don't give people tools, mind models, in this case, the mind models, to be able to have these internal reviews to check against how we think we are we actually? And is there evidence of that?
I think it's one of Tim and Becky's questions, the how do you know?
Yes.
Tim, would you talk about that a little bit with some of the feelings and things that you guys have navigated?
So I guess one of the biggest things that, brought this question up is we found that, we just ask ourselves, what am I feeling? What's coming up for me? And you would answer, but then it would kind of just leave it there. And it didn't really move forward a lot of times. And so we started asking, well, how do you know? And so that we were actually not just externalizing, not just saying the words, but actually looking for that external evidence, looking for those things outside of us, which again just feeds that curiosity and kept us moving forward. How do I know? Looking for those external behaviors, things outside of us that, were there, or if we were just in a story, okay, there's no external evidence here, and it's just a story that I've internally told myself, and there's nothing to, basically show any external evidence of this thing. And so it was one way to, struggling for the word, just basically keep that curiosity going and look for those external behaviors and external things outside of us, so that we could determine whether, compare and contrast, whether we were just in a story or whether it was actually a thing to move us forward. So
Thank you. I appreciate that. Blair, could you comment a little bit on hey, Becky, welcome. Did you want to add anything to that discussion at all?
she might be able to expand upon that a little bit more, because that was something that she originally brought. It was kind of her question that she brought to our relationship.
We were talking
Yes.
about the how do you know question. I don't know if you've been tracking with what we've been doing here.
Yeah, so how do you know, for me, was an anchoring question to bring me to the present. And facing grief, PTSD, trauma, anxiety, feelings of things, like, oh, I can't do that. I felt inequipped or ill-equipped to do something. I would, like, I can't do that. And that was when I started giving myself the timeout, like, okay, is it that you physically can't do this? Like, you don't have the capacity, like capability? Like, I can't go to the store or walk down the toy aisle. Is it that you actually can't do that? Or is it that you're worried about the feelings and the emotions that may come up if you do so? And so it became a practice to kind of a litmus test of, is what I'm saying actually truth? Or is it, as Tim was saying, is it a story? But it was very much tied into the emotional bits of how I was feeling about something, as well as like the physical pieces, so that the, you know, the danger zone of starting to name and label something, as was shared tonight, what it can do for you if we don't assess if this is actually, in alignment with how I see myself now, or how other people can see myself, getting, third parties to maybe chime in so that you can depict what's actually the truth of the situation.
Well, the other thing that kind of spurred that question as well, just thinking through like the evolution of this question, so many times we are approached. Some of us know Becky's and I's story of losing our girls and what we've been working with the mind models to help work through, the PTSD, the trauma, those kinds of things that come up with it. Somebody hears our story and they'll, wow, like you guys are amazing. You're inspirational. Like that's so cool. I don't know how you guys do it. I couldn't do that. And we've heard that so many times. Like, there's no way I could do that. I couldn't even imagine. I can't even. And that honestly, it hurts my heart to hear people say that. Because when we talk about that personal power, we each, every single one of us has this power within us that we can overcome anything. It's just how do we see it? How are we approaching it? How do we know? And it's and so when somebody approaches us and they're like, I couldn't do that. I'm like, well, how do you know you can't do that? They just discount it and toss it out like they don't have the strength, the power, the whatever to overcome a hard thing in their life, and it's almost as if they don't even make the attempt. It's just kind of baby out with the bathwater. And and that's part of that question as well, is just how do you know, looking for that external again.
And I think compare and contrast also enters here, where we can look back at the things that we've done before, that we've done effectively, especially when you're in that dark space. Um, how do you know you can do it? Well, if you did it once, what are the odds? What's the high, probability that you'll be able to do that thing again, or you'll be able to overcome that thing? It's holding lightly and loosely and playing within the scope of effectiveness within remember versus relive, right? Remember the things that you've done effectively, like looking for those wins, those things that are working, so that you can build upon it and understand that it wasn't necessarily a one and done. And the only way that you know is by testing. My other favorite thing, what starts with T and ends with T. And how might you test to see? Blair?
One of the things that I want to reinforce here, if you guys listen to the language patterns that both Tim and Becky are using, now it is a past future. And when they describe how they're like walking down the aisle of a toy store or going into a toy store even, um, Becky went back to the past and recollected the emotions, but took those emotions and projected them into the future. If she did not have the tools to start with T, end with D, test, if she didn't have the skills to test and a strategy to test, she'd be stuck. She's hooped. And she would label herself as, I can't do that, as opposed to figuring out and gaining clarity instead of stating something with imposed certainty. She's getting clarity and asking and gets curious to determine if she can or cannot do that right now. And you
Blair,
heard,
I was wondering, I
go
would
ahead.
I would really like you to comment on a trap with the external, looking for external evidence, that
Absolutely.
that there's an impact of our personal filter when it comes to evaluating external evidence that can actually sink the ship lower.
Actually,
And
I think you've got a view on this that you might be best sharing.
I don't know. I remember doing it. I don't I've not been able to name and label what exactly I was doing when I was doing this. This is part of the thing I
You
was
tell the
looking.
story, I'll interrupt and I'll name and label it. How's that?
Okay. Just that when we started playing with that question that, you know, what have I done effectively? Part of the reason that was so hard to answer that, and I had no answers for it, is that everything I looked at appeared to be a failure. So I could look at all the things in my life that I had not succeeded at, that did not measure up to expectations, that did not produce the desired results. And to
Okay.
me, those were all proof.
Right. So what we're doing is we're collecting our bundle of knowledge, and she said reasons. So are those just reasons? And so you got to remember the why question concept has reasons, excuses, rationalizations, and justifications. But she took the only part of the why question concept, the function of a why question concept, and put it that actually can also be part of a what question concept, what reasons, but only held them past based. And did you hear her emotionally loading and justifying her position? Because she's only looking for what doesn't work. That's a justification, but it's disguised as a reason because it seems logical.
It does, or it used to.
In fact, it seems that because it's occurred, it must be true now. But that's the problem. That's what Becky wound up sharing, is that she was willing to test if the nowness of something was still true. It was back then, but is it still true? Whereas in Patty's case, I had to work with her for basically 2 months to get out one word that changed, that unlocked everything that was capable. And capability, what did in her story, if you guys recall, was capability past, present, or future, Patty?
Just capable.
Yeah, but
Just
okay, it was
capable.
just capable. But are you capable now?
Are you asking me?
No. Well, back then, were
Her
you?
tense was present tense. I get what
Yeah,
you're saying there.
yeah. Her
Okay.
tense when she described that capability was present tense, not past. And that's the power of understanding how our brain is processing. Because if we're justifying our past, and I wanted to say if we're just justifying our past, but if we're justifying our past with reasons and excuses and rationalizations, we're hooped. And we practice that part of self-talk in our brain. And that's what Patty was sharing, is how she would practice it. But you change that pattern and you get it into the present. All of a sudden, is it still true? Can creep in. And so long as you're willing to test if it is still true, that's the game changer right there.
Zach would like to share an example. Go
Go
ahead,
for
Zach.
it.
Well, this happens a lot, not just in business, but especially in trading. And I like that it's a reason. So I'm thinking of this one guy in particular right now. I just got done talking to him over the weekend. He's having some issues with like, can I do this? Can I be a trader kind of thing?
Yeah.
And so I was asking him questions like, have you ever done it on purpose? Have you ever made a good trade intentionally? And he's like, well, yeah. Well, Does that answer your question? Right. And so just kind of working with him a little bit and he said, yeah, but I'm not profitable and I'm not going to be delusional is the word he used, delusional with my trading. And so I think this is where it's pertinent to what you guys are talking about because I told him delusion works both ways. If you're only focused on losses that happened however many years ago before you were even working with me, like you're bringing the past into your present. You're not focused on your progress and what you've been able to do. Let's compare 2 years ago compared to this last month. What does it look like? And so, but in business, people do that too. They may have had a tough year or something, and they focus so heavily on that that they ignore the positive and developments and things and progress points that are actually happening. So when you're looking for externally verifiable things, you can't only nitpick the ones that kind of feed the negative part of the thought process, you know? So I like that. Those are
Okay,
justifications.
I want to play the devil's advocate here, but you
Okay.
can't just, like Zach, you can't just, take
Yeah,
I cherry pick all the best stuff.
true.
So how do you deal with that?
Uh, just I call it honest numbers is what I like to refer to it as because I'm an analyst kind of guy. I like
Yeah.
numbers. I like looking at stuff like that. And numbers, they can be emotionless and straight fact, but they can also be manipulated in a way that justifies whatever you're trying to find.
Okay.
Um, and so sure. So with this guy, with this individual, as an example, um, he has really good streaks, like 1, 2 week streaks of profits, and then he has like 1 day of losing everything. So is that, is it profitable? No. But let's ask other more effective questions to identify what the problem is. And so then it's okay, let's look at these winning days. What worked, what didn't work, what might you do differently? And then let's look at the losing day. What worked, what didn't work, what might you do differently? And that's what so yeah, so you can't don't ignore the negative data by any means. You have to address it and kind of face it.
One of the things that I do with this when I'm working with people, even traders that I've worked with before, one of the things that I do is I get a trend. And that's how come I try to get people and almost insist that they do three things that worked, two things that didn't work, and one thing that they're willing to change. Because when they use the 3-2-1 rule, okay, the mind model of 3-2-1, they start realizing that they are winning and that even if they're very small wins and very large, two things that are very large that didn't work, they still have something to change and improve. That means they're leaving with the ability to be curious about change. Okay?
I
And that's
I'm
important.
totally down. I'm totally backing that because that's something that will happen is when people do have a winning streak, they get overconfident and they start making bad decisions.
Exactly true. And that's how come I try and limit those three things that are successful, two things that aren't, sorry, not successful, three things that are effective, two things that are ineffective, and one thing to change. And getting into that kind of habit creates a repetition. That repetition creates that pattern of looking for things that are improving, looking for things that aren't improving, and one thing to change. And recognizing the power of one thing that you change every day. One thing, if you change one thing every day in an entire year, you've made 365 changes. If you test 365 and you only have a 50-50 chance, like it either works or it doesn't work, and you start out even at 10%, that's still 35, well, 36 changes that were highly effective during the year. And you dropped the rest. You don't have to keep going with the things that didn't work. You go with the things that do work. And most people do that spontaneously, and it's huge for them. Colin, earlier you moved close to the mic. I was wondering if you had something to contribute.
My back probably just hurt, but I will say that especially working with my groups that I work with, I've started asking what worked a lot more or what's working. And it's kind of funny because when I first started doing that, people would respond to that question still with what didn't work or what wasn't working
Yep.
because it's such a default.
Yep.
Most of the time, yeah, what's working for you? Well, I mean, I did this the other day and that, oh man, this pattern, like not working. I do this and that doesn't work. Like, wait a minute, hold on. What is working? And it's discounted as like, well, if it's working, then I don't even need to think about it. So why bother?
Exactly. And so what is the why bother? What's the answer to the why bother?
Well, if you know something that works, this is to your point, then you have a starting point. You have something like you've got kind of a baseline and you can keep doing more of that. If you know one thing that doesn't work, that can be helpful, but it doesn't tell you what to do. To the point very early in the call about replacement behaviors, if you don't have an alternative, then what doesn't work is not not that helpful to know unless you
Exactly.
have something else you might test. Starts with T, ends with T.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. So, um, there are some really important pieces here. The why hole that we get sucked into, this why state of being, is 100% past language. And when we're in our depression, all we do is what you said. We see and we have this quasi-mild depression that goes on where all we can see is what doesn't work all the time. And when we start sprinkling in two or three things that are effective, and we can actually answer the question when we ask it, what works? And we can think about what's working or what works. Oh my gosh, that whole past future why loop does not have to be a stuck state anymore. It can be, okay, that didn't work. Now, what does work? What might I do completely differently? And that is how you can figure out how to break free. And when you say completely differently than what I've done before, your brain goes into curiosity mode and you've engaged your prefrontal cortex, your brain in a completely different way. And that is huge. And how many times do you ask yourself, how might I do this completely differently? Not many if you haven't taken the mind models. Not many people do that at all. Okay. So we have to also do sort of what you were referencing earlier is, and we were doing this on our prep meeting yesterday, was describing feelings, like saying how we feel accurately and letting them be a single word answer, which is what I'm feeling. But if we go, well, I'm going to describe my feelings, and we start off because so and so upset me and I was frustrated and they did this and this and this and this, and there's this whole story. And nine times out of 10, when you start with because, you're going to go into a while loop. So if you just get the discipline to stop yourself and just say one or two or three words of what you're feeling in the moment, that's huge. And name and label those. So you can break free of remembering everything and reliving it, or reliving it, or just breaking free into remembering. Sorry, I got that backwards. Break free into just remembering it and have it as a time delayed thing. Like how we remember everything in life has a distance to it of time. It's not like we're in it, but reliving is like we're in it. So get distance on it. Give yourself that relief of a little bit of distance with time.
Blair,
Go for it.
I'd like to shift us to our wrap-up question for people and hear from people what they're taking out of this. The wrap-up question that goes with this is going to be to share a time that you effectively pivoted out of depression. A time, excuse me, a time you effectively pivoted out of depression. And so with that, Colin, I'm going to pass it to you for wrap-up.
Thanks, Patty. Brent, you've been quiet tonight, but would you be willing to kick off the wrap up? And if you missed your question, share a time you effectively pivoted out of a depression.
Yeah. Let's see. I was thinking I don't normally label like spots where I'm in depression, but I can remember this was a while this was quite, years, years and years ago, but I remember this was in I was in football and I happened to have an injury, so I was out of playing for quite some time. And I happened to I realized I get into a depressive state. I realized it because I was having like darker thoughts, and it didn't really seem to go on. And my mood, I wasn't joyful. Like I didn't have any joy. It was just I didn't really know what to do. Um, but what got me out of it was talking about it. At the time, my girlfriend asked me about it, and I opened up and I talked about it. And then, so that had some relief, but then actually what really got out was I was able to start doing things more physically, getting back into that groove that where I wanted to be. So the things I wanted to do in football to get back to playing. So when was able to start doing that physically, but what kicked it off was the verbalizing and talking about it. So yeah.
Thank you, Brent. Do you have a 1 to 10 tonight?
Um, I would say for me, I went through a lot of this and analyzed it. So I would give it a 8 for me. Yeah.
Thank you, Brent.
Mhm.
Leslie, you look very deep in thought over there. Are you willing to participate in the wrap up tonight?
Certainly. Thank you, Colin. Um, Time I effectively pivoted out of depression. I know it's happened a few times lately where, well, one of them I had expressed a few weeks ago about finding out that somebody that was important to me in work in my past life had passed away, and the whole uh, negative Y canyon that opened from that, and how I was able to realize that you can build a bridge across a canyon. And I was able to transition out of that situation, that negative. Yeah, part of it was depression. So yeah, it worked. Things that I would not have been able to do a couple of years ago, that's for sure. Since starting and learning the mind models and sharing time with on a weekly basis with this group of wonderful people here. A strong 9 for me. Lots of information tonight. It just is so positively reinforcing the behaviors that I have learned to change So thank you.
Thank you, Leslie. Zach, I see you jumped back on camera. Would you like to participate in the wrap up tonight?
Yes. So for the question, um, I actually went into kind of a depressive state after my divorce, and this was when I had knowledge of the mind models too. So it was kind of cool to um experience that, and Blair kind of helped me. It was like a crazy deep why hole that I was kind of in. And Blair asked me just a couple of very, very simple questions. One was, "Are you happy?" And or happier. It was I think how he worded it. And it kind of snapped me into the present. And I was like, huh, yeah, because of where I came from with the relationship of 10 years and stuff. And so that kind of snapped me out of the why hole for long enough to properly evaluate. Um, and so that was a really great pivot. Very simple question. So anyway, yeah, that was that. And then I would give tonight easily a 9.8. I love um, a lot of what was talked about with Patty asking like, "Who am I?" and the label of capable. I like the question, "How do you know?" From Tim and Becky. That's really cool. I'm going to do that from now on too, to myself. If I name and label a feeling or something, how do you know? That's really cool. It really takes it to external. Um, so yeah, 9.8. A very, very effective evening. Thank you.
Thanks, Zach. Shannon, would you like to participate in the wrap up tonight?
Yes. This is an interesting question for me to think about because I'm sure that I've had those feelings, but I mean, I don't use that word just because of growing up with my mom. Like it was something that I was just very aware of the language around it. And so I never paused. I mean, I've had moments in my life where I have felt a sense of darkness and heaviness. And, you know, finding my way forward of that it is something that at the time I don't think I had the skills to like evaluate. Now, what exactly did I just do here? And so it's an interesting thing to have more skills and more language now. Um, for me, I think in the present, those feelings can crop up topically. Like if I choose to dwell on a certain subject that can stir those emotions in myself, subjects that I find, can take me in there, just areas of my life that haven't been able to move forward the way that I would like to. And I do find a certain element of verbal processing to be helpful with shifting that emotion. But I also find the power of choice in terms of that, like in my mind, I make I'm still trying to come up with like a children's toy for this or something. But in my head, I think of like, those shades that you pull down that are like that retractable kind of shade. I picture a window shade with like a bunch of different colors on it. And I can like pull this emotion down this far. And then I can pull this one even farther. And this one's just a little bit like in my head. That's how it is. So even if I do have like, let's say a subject matter comes up that stirs those feelings for me, I find that taking stock of what else am I feeling and putting it all together and then being like, okay, yes, I do feel depressed about this particular subject, but I actually really feel like this too right now. And there's this, and there's this. And if you put all of them together and like train your mind to choose the more effective things like that, keeps me really present. It's not that the other things don't exist, and I could choose to have a party with them, but I don't, I don't really want to. Oh, why whole party? Um, to make the choice, and it's not easy, and it definitely doesn't feel great, but it's like this physical, like lean in to what is more effective, and then over time the feelings of darkness fade, and I can genuinely smile and have joy thinking about the ones I did choose to pull down. And so I know that's a little bit more general because it's more topical for me. It's not like a big situation. I haven't had one of those in a long time. And honestly, I really thought my surgery was going to do that to me, because the last one 4 years ago had a lot around it, and absolutely no issues like that this time around. It was really present. My life was full and busy, whether or not I was working. I actually sat there on the couch, like, how did I ever find time to have a job? Like, because there was so much, life was just so full even without working. And so it was really, there was a lot of really really strong and healthy things that happened around this most recent time. And I'm still working my way back healing wise, but it's with light and with positivity, and noticing in my body, hey, let's take stock. Here are the progress markers. You've grown, you can stand on your feet for this long without this much pain. And, I did have a 3-month check-in with my doctor today, and it was a lot of evaluation. What percentage of this do you feel? And realizing what dramatic change already has happened, and how, you know, choosing to think about those 3 things that work really, really does help you're training your own brain. Um, Tonight was a 9 for me. I really, that what words would I use to describe myself? That was a good one. I don't remember that one from hearing the stories. So that one I'll have to practice. Um, I last week around Colin, you mentioned in the chat an introvert name and label, and Jackie was talking about the shyness. I've been challenging the label extrovert that I was given as a child, and I have been doing some research on both introvert and extrovert, and evaluating myself and trying to take some stock of that, and feeling compelled to be a people person. And I love people, but how do I recharge, and what, like around how do I behave to that name and label, and what does that do to my life, and what does it look like if I choose maybe some different words to describe myself? So that was a really fun, a fun place to go in your mind. I also liked, Blair, at the beginning, you were talking about the physiological structure of your brain can change, and the possibilities involved in that are so powerful that our language can either reinforce ineffective things or change towards more effective. It's always doing something.
Yes, it is.
And it can either, do something effective or something ineffective. And I liked the way you phrased that, because it's really sobering to realize that in this moment, am I reinforcing something ineffective, or am I making a choice to build something effective and that's going to help me thrive in the future? How do you know? Great question. I was actually trying to think of that question earlier to ask my mom that question. I could not. So it's like, just that thing that we know, just do it right now. Practice it, whatever it is. So I'm glad that one popped up. And yes, so thank you very much. It's a 9 tonight.
Thank you, Shannon. Daniel, I don't know if you wanted to participate in the wrap up. If you do, typically how we do wrap up, it's just one takeaway for you and put a number from 1 to 10 on the value that you received. Lately, we've been also doing these extra wrap up questions. Tonight's is share a time you effectively pivoted out of depression. Daniel, would you like to participate in the wrap up tonight? I will take the pause as a not tonight. Okay. In that case, I will go. So for me, I haven't identified with depression much. Oh, Daniel says tucked in with family, but thank you. Awesome. Okay. I haven't identified with depression much personally. However, I have had depressed feelings before. I'll say a couple nights ago, actually, I was uh, harsher with my son than I would like to be. And I felt some guilt after that. And then yesterday, he didn't really want to be around me very much. He was trying to give me the cold shoulder, didn't want to participate in this project that I had set up for us. And it really kind of took the wind out of my sails. And I was just sitting on the couch not wanting to do anything, which is unusual for me. Um, but the pivot was like, I'm going to just see what he is willing to do, see what he is open to, um, and ask him if he'd like to do some of the things that he usually really enjoys doing together. And he wanted to wait a little bit, but then he was up for it, and we reconnected, and then he was excited about the project, and so we did that too. And so it was a effective pivot of just like getting curious about what might we do, even if it wasn't what I had in mind originally, and it worked. So that was effective for me. And yeah, tonight I put it at a 9.6 for me. Tim, would you like to participate in the wrap up tonight?
Yes, thank you, Colin. So tonight's a 9.5 for me. The highlight, I really appreciated when Blair was talking through as Shannon mentioned, talking about how our language patterns and the connection with the brain and how we're even, our brains can change and either move towards something that is more effective, or we could be, reinforcing a stuck state and something that is not effective for us in moving forward, and we really do get stuck in that place of that why hole, and it bleeds into a really dark place, of depression. um with the question tonight, thinking back on there's it's an interesting question, because I don't know that I necessarily connect with the word of depression, that I've ever actually been, so to speak, depressed. Deep sadness, moments of it, yeah, they ebb and flow quite a bit. And really over the last 5 years, we as I mentioned earlier, for those of you that may not know Becky's and I's story, we did lose our girls, both of my daughters, back in 2020 in a flash flood. And right after, gratefully, we knew Blair, we had gone through, we'd been mind model certified. And so we had the skill sets. And when that happened back in 2020, we were able to put these skill sets, to the test. We really leaned into the mind models. And I was able, in that moment, to work myself through those deep sadness when they showed up. I was able to ask myself questions. We changed the environment of our home. We had two little girls that were running around the house, and it was dance parties and toys everywhere and all sorts of stuff that was just the normal in our home. And suddenly, as you can imagine, when a home goes silent and there's nothing but, the sadness and the longing for them to be there, changing the environment, doing, actually giving away their toys and seeing the joy on the neighbors' kids' faces and those kinds of things, doing those, even though it was hard to see those toys go, there was so much joy that came with seeing another child's face light up. It was the imagination behind the toy that made it, you know, so powerful and so alive. And so doing those little things in the beginning really helped pull out of that place of, I guess, deep sadness, depression. Um, but really, I started thinking about it. So that was, the first couple years I was working through it. But it came to a place of I had done all that. We changed our home. But here about 2 years ago, I found myself slipping into what I would consider probably the closest to depression as I've got. Um, I was driving truck, driving semi, spending a lot of time by myself. And that internal, I put in the chat earlier, the internal versus external. And when Blair was talking about the case studies, one of the things that came up for me is, yeah, the group that had nothing, they were probably spending a ton of time in their own heads, justifying, rationalizing, and and just staying stuck in that why hole. The others that were able to, do the verbal communication, they had somebody to bounce their emotions off, ask questions, those kinds of things. And so it makes sense that they gained traction. And then, the chemical, those who were able to do medication, those kinds of things, medications have been proven to chemically change the brain and those kinds of things. So when I found myself sitting in the truck, spending so much time internally, that is when I was really slipping into that place of depression. I came home one night and I just said to Becky, I'm like, the house is quiet. I'm spending way too much time at my job internally. It's time for change. It's time to test something else. It's time to do something. This is not working for me. Drastic measures. Long story short, we ended up selling our house. I ended up just walking away from my career driving truck, which I was one of the senior drivers, had tons of benefits and all sorts of perks. And I just walked away from it all because I needed a shift. I needed a radical change in my life and stepped into the world of entrepreneurship, which takes a lot of curiosity, a lot of ups and downs, but it challenges me. It keeps me engaged. It keeps me thinking and looking for the external evidences and those kinds of things. So that was probably the biggest shift for me was about 2 years ago when I really leaned into the curiosity, testing something new, testing a change. And um, that's just the way we think through it, the way we behave really changes everything. So that's best I know how to answer that question.
Thanks, Tim. Did you put a number on it? I might have missed it.
9.5. Yep.
Okay, thanks. Becky, would you like to participate in the wrap up tonight?
I will. 9.3 for me tonight. I will echo what's been said. It's really empowering and sobering at the same time to be aware that how we think about things has such a drastic physiological impact. We don't know what we don't know. And what the cool thing about mind models is it allows us to be effective incrementally to start making changes. And that just awareness piece of it, like what I do, what wires together, fires together. I'm not helpless. I'm not hopeless. I do have choice. Even if I don't like my choices, I still have choice and I can still move through that and be effective. Has been a moniker for me in my life. Uh, sorry about the beeping, if you guys can hear that. There's been bouts of depression in my life, answering the question, how have I dealt with it? Prior to mind models, there was a spot of time where I was actually on medication and found myself in a space where I was like flatlined. I didn't have any emotions. And so I adopted that as my new normal and habituated not feeling, stuffing down the emotions and things like that. And what I have found for myself that the freedom that comes in naming and labeling and describing my feelings has helped me limit those pockets of time where things have gotten dark and heavy and been able to move through them more effectively because I can pair it with the 3 E's. I can evaluate is what am I feeling first and foremost? Where am I feeling in my body? Is it working for me right now? And if it is, let it have its moment. And the fact that I need to feel this, I'm like angry and frustrated, whatever the thing is, but being able to work with it, put limits and timestamps on it. Okay, go ahead, scream, cry, throw for 5 minutes or 3 minutes or whatever, and then check back in. Is this where you want to be? Is it still working for you? Becoming more aware using an ANAMPU, awareness, notice, process, and understanding was able to help me create bridges and pathways through those moments so that I didn't get bogged down in such a potentially deep, dark hole. So that's for me tonight.
Thank you, Becky. Patty, would you like to wrap up tonight?
Yes, I would. Thank you. I've sort of talked about my thing all night, so I'm not going to go back there right now. But my number for tonight is a solid 9. I really appreciate everybody's stories about their own personal experiences. And Blair, I think reinforcing that idea that our words are actually having an impact biochemically on the neuroplasticity of the brain. I think that's really sobering, and my models do a lot to keep us in a more effective space. So kudos and thank you for those. And with that, I'm going to pass.
Thank you, Patty. Blair, would you like to wrap up the wrap up?
Absolutely. So for me, the long and short of it is language is medicine.
Mm.
How we talk to ourselves, literally, and it's not what we believe. Okay. Like there's a lot of people out there say, believe this, believe that, do whatever, manifest this, manifest that. Okay. If it works for you, great. I'm not going to take that away. But what I will say is that anything you practice long enough tends to happen. So if you practice thinking about things positively, do those positive things, are they more likely to happen? Well, yes and no. But the yes part of it is if you have the behaviors associated with those things that you want to bring into your life, guess what? It's more probable that you will do more of that. So is it manifesting or is it executing behaviors to create desired results? It doesn't matter what name and label you throw on it, a little bit, but not much. Because the doing of the behavior, like I say, here and back in life skills, if you don't do it, it doesn't count. So practicing what I'm preaching. Friday, my latest person that I'm working with was unable to show up. She had 4 flat or low tires. She needed to go in and drop off her kids with her ex, and the day was a complete blow up, and it did not work for her. She promptly got sick, and of course, it all comes back to little old me because she wasn't able to show up and work with me. Well, my VA on Monday, I had to let go because of no showing and all kinds of stuff. So, what does your brain do? It sees a pattern and says, is this also happening? And I go, Blair, you got to test. You have to show up and test. You cannot jump to conclusions. You have to test. Your T word there. Your T starts with T, ends with D, test. You have to test. You have to find out what's real, what's externally verifiable. Well, she showed up on time today, my new person that I'm building my business going forward with. We hung out until I was starving at about 1:30, like from 9:30 in the morning till 1:30 in the afternoon. And I hadn't even had breakfast. I had a cup of coffee, but that was it. And broke for that and then worked again right through until 4:30. And she was there full time. My other VA would never do that. My current person that I'm building my opportunity with did, and it's huge. It's huge. It's extraordinarily positive. And I now have externally verifiable evidence that she is not, just because she's assisting me doesn't mean she's doing the behavior that the other one did. The other one's behavior was semi-reasonable, but it was, 7, 8 months of doing things that weren't working and not being, it just went down, 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 down. And at some point you got to say enough's enough. But pulling in and going, I need to evaluate this and I have to get a desired result. So my intention was to get the website built out today. It wasn't quite done, but it'll probably be done tomorrow. And so that's huge. Okay, we're getting things moving forward. I've got to ask questions, not tell myself what's going on, and get clarity instead of assuming certainty. So I did all of those things. And yet, all of those things were not like this is important, people. It was not because I didn't have emotions of worry or concern. It's I had those emotions of worry and concern that I needed to test to find out if those things that are popping up from past potential past future loop of taking my past stuff, what happened with my VA, and projecting it into the future onto my new person and saying it's going to be the same and acting as though it's certain, but interrupting that with clarity to get clear, not be certain, but to get clear. And when you do that, my day pivoted because, well, as I said, she hung in there the whole time. She was highly um, contributing a ton of stuff and working on her own stuff, but also contributing everything that I needed. It was there and it was huge. So avoiding a slide, avoiding a moment of emotional collapse into a past future loop or into a Y hole, literally a Y hole. And I know this shot. I created it. So, like, you can give yourself all kinds of beat up all you want. But you know what? Hey, the guy that created this still falls into Y holes or at least recognizes when I'm on the edge of one so I can sidestep it. And that's what I do is I sidestepped plummeting into something that I didn't need more of. And that's huge because a horrible day turned into a great one. So to me, 9.8.
Thank you, Blair. With that, I will hand it over to Becky for the outro.
All right, you guys. Appreciate everybody who has shared today. Again, Blair Dunkley experience is really an experience, and we all come into it with kind of what we have going on in our worlds and are able to work with the material, which is fantastic. We find out insights, things that can help us be more effective. And Blair has been so generous to put together an opportunity for you to go deeper, because again, we talk about a lot on the Tuesday nights, but we can't go as deep as we would like to. Because there's just a lot. And again, we prioritize the experience of the participants over just sharing information. So if you want to go deeper and have access to more material on the topics that we've been talking about, depression, anxiety, whys in general, and learn more about how mind models can change your life, Blair's put together the insider notes where you can get access to all historical and ongoing from episode 318. We're on 368. So that's over 50. Am my math correct? Over 50 deep dives into what we've been talking about on Tuesday nights. You can do that by going to blairdunkley.com/BDE Insider Notes. It's $25 a month or $300 a year. Definitely recommend you taking advantage of that so that you can see how mind models can support you in your world. Another couple announcements is Mind Model Method Coach Training is live and in person in Arizona, January 5th through 8th and the 13th through 16th. Again, if you want to fast track results, if you want to increase your speed of recovery, if you want to become more resourceful, you want to be more effective in business, relationships, family, any area in your life that you want to become more effective at, highly recommend that you get yourself to the Mind Model Method Coach Training. Going deeper than we can on Tuesday nights, really learning the core principles and application pieces that will set a framework up for you for effectiveness that will continue with you forever in life if you choose to use them. Great information on that. Email Blair at Blair Rewiring Your Mind for Wealth. No, Blair at Blair
Rewiringthemind.com.
mind.com. Thank you. You can get more information on that. It will be upcoming as well. And then Blair's also got a couple books on Amazon. You can get Ultimate Mind Hacking and Phobia Freedom Formula. You can Google Blair's name on Amazon, search it, or type in the names Ultimate Mind Hacking or Phobia Freedom Formula. Again, resources for you to see how mind models can help you become more effective in your life. Thank you guys for hanging out for the last 90 minutes. Appreciate everybody who shared. Those of you on YouTube, we appreciate you tuning in. Please comment, like, and subscribe. And if you would like to join us here, again, we would love to have you with us. We are here every Tuesday night at 7 p.m. Mountain and 9 p.m. Eastern. And with that, we'll have a wonderful rest of your evening wherever you're tuning in from, you guys. Take care.
Take care. Thanks, Daniel, for showing up. Hope we see you again.